and welcome to your YouTube channel, Learn English Lab. Today's podcast topic name is American Cultural Values in English, Why Americans Talk the Way They Do. And we are really getting into the weeds today.
No, absolutely. It's a huge topic.
It really is. So let's paint a picture here for you, the listener. You have a C2 English certificate. You've got flawless grammar and like this massive vocabulary.
Right. You've done all the hard work.
Exactly. You've put in the hours. So why did your American boss just look completely confused when you answered a really simple question in your morning meeting?
Yeah, that is the worst feeling.
It is. Imagine you've just moved to the U.S. You feel incredibly prepared. You spent years, maybe decades, even studying grammar rules, passing those grueling proficiency exams, and, binge watching American TV shows to perfect the accent.
The classic method, right?
Right. You know the language inside and out. So you walk into your first day at a new corporate job. You're standing by the coffee machine, and this colleague you have literally never met before locks eyes with you, gives you this massive smile, says, "Hey, how's it going?" And then...
Let me guess. They just keep walking.
Yes. They just keep walking right past you before you can even open your mouth to answer.
Which leaves you standing there, coffee in hand, completely bewildered. You're just wondering if you committed some massive social faux pas.
Absolutely bewildered. You're standing there thinking, wait, did I do something wrong? Was I supposed to answer faster? And then it actually gets more confusing.
It always is.
Later that afternoon, your manager, a guy who is like 20 years older than you, who runs the entire department.
Someone you would absolutely address with a formal title in your home country.
Exactly. He looks at you and says, "Oh, just call me Dave."
Wow.
And then you go to lunch. You sit next to an acquaintance you barely know. They ask what you did over the weekend. And out of nowhere, they start sharing this intensely personal, highly emotional story about their family dynamics and like a recent divorce.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's heavy for a first day.
Right. By the end of this first day, your head is spinning. You are left wondering, are these people incredibly friendly? Are they incredibly rude? Or is something else completely different happening beneath the surface here?
It's the ultimate whiplash, honestly. Yeah. And if you, the listener, have ever experienced anything even remotely similar to this, well, we want to tell you right now that you are not alone.
Definitely not alone.
What you experienced on that hypothetical first day, or maybe your actual first day, it has almost nothing to do with your language proficiency. It has, well, everything to do with cultural misalignment.
And that brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive. We are moving completely beyond grammar today.
We have to.
Yeah, we're moving beyond vocabulary lists and pronunciation drills. Because when you reach this advanced level, the gap between you and a native speaker is no longer about, knowing the right verb tense. The gap is all about cultural fluency.
That's a great term for it, cultural fluency.
Right. It's about all those unspoken rules and deeply ingrained values that are actively shaping everyday communication. I actually like to think of it like playing a sport.
Oh, I like analogies. Let's hear it.
Okay, so imagine you're learning to play soccer or basketball. Mastering the grammar and the vocabulary, that's like knowing the rules of the game. You know what a foul is, you know how long the game lasts, you know the boundaries of the field.
Right, the mechanical stuff.
Exactly. But cultural fluency, that is understanding the strategy. It's understanding the psychology of the other players, the unspoken tempo of the match, the subtle signals your teammates give you. You can know all the rules perfectly, but if you don't understand the rhythm of the game, you are going to get run over on the field.
That is spot on. The sports analogy really touches on the mechanics, but let's look at the psychology behind it too. Language isn't just a sterile tool for transmitting data from brain A to brain B.
Right. It's not a computer code.
Exactly. It operates as a mirror. It reflects an entire society's worldview, their historical priorities, their unspoken social contracts. The frustration you feel when you get run over in a conversation, well, it happens because you are applying your native cultural psychology to a foreign linguistic playing field.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. You might construct a flawless, beautifully structured sentence and still receive this totally puzzled look from an American colleague.
Which is so frustrating.
Extremely. And it's not because your English was wrong, but because your delivery, your tone, or your level of directness simply didn't align with what their brain was culturally conditioned to expect.
Right. It's like there's this invisible wall of cultural misalignment. And this invisible wall, it hits you hardest at the C1 or C2 level of English, the advanced plateau.
Because people expect you to know everything.
Exactly. You aren't struggling with conjugations anymore, so people just assume you understand the culture just as well as you understand the vocabulary.
And the stakes are incredibly high at this stage. I mean, this misalignment in tone or delivery, it affects real-world outcomes for you.
Big time.
It impacts your job interviews, your ability to form friendships, and even how competent people perceive you to be. It's immensely frustrating to know your technical skills are top tier, yet feel you are being judged on this unspoken cultural rubric that you were never given the answer key to.
Okay, let me just push back on this for a second, kind of on behalf of you, the listener, because honestly, it feels a bit unfair, doesn't it?
It really does.
If someone has put in the grueling hours, if their English is grammatically perfect and highly functional, shouldn't that be enough? Why does the burden fall entirely on the speaker, the person who has already done the massive work of learning a second language, to adapt to these invisible cultural expectations? I mean, why can't the native speaker just listen to the literal words being said?
I completely get that. It's a very valid frustration. But the reason native speakers can't just listen to the words is because the words themselves are built out of cultural assumptions.
Built out of cultural assumptions. Okay, how so?
Well, take the concept of egalitarianism. It's not just an abstract political philosophy in the United States. It is practically baked into the very grammar and usage of American English.
Let's pause right there. Break down egalitarianism for me in this specific context. Because, how is a political concept changing how I talk at the water cooler?
Well, let's look at history. The United States was fundamentally founded on a rejection of aristocratic Europe.
Right, the whole revolution thing.
Exactly. They rejected kings, lords, and rigid class systems. Over centuries, that political rejection seeped into the language. Think about languages that have a formal and informal you like usted versus tu in Spanish, or vous versus tu in French.
Oh, right. English doesn't really have that anymore.
Not anymore, but it used to. Thou was the informal, and you was the formal or plural. But over time, English speakers essentially dropped the informal entirely. Everyone became you. It was a literal linguistic leveling of the playing field.
Oh, wow. That makes so much sense. So when my older, highly senior boss says, just call me Dave, he isn't just trying to be a cool, laid-back guy. He's actively participating in this linguistic tradition of flattening the hierarchy.
Exactly. He's performing American egalitarianism. To a professional from a culture with high power distance, like, say, Japan or Germany, calling the CEO by his first name might feel incredibly disrespectful.
Yeah, it may feel almost physically uncomfortable.
Right. But to an American, enforcing titles like Sir or Mr. Smith in a modern office, well, it feels rigid. It creates an artificial barrier. Call me Dave is a linguistic mechanism that says we are on the same team, we are equals, let's get to work.
So it's about team building.
Exactly. If you insist on calling him Mr. Smith, you aren't showing respect in his eyes. You are creating unwanted distance. You're saying we are not on the same level.
That is a massive paradigm shift. But wait, if we're all theoretically equals and we flatten the hierarchy so everyone's just Dave and Sarah, how do things actually get done?
What do you mean?
Well, without a rigid hierarchy telling everyone what to do and knowing exactly who is in charge of whom, how does an American office function?
That question leads us straight into the concept of individualism and the low context communication style.
Okay, low context. Let's unpack that.
Because Americans don't rely on strict social hierarchies to dictate meaning, they have to rely entirely on the literal words they speak. We can describe American English as a low context culture.
Meaning the context doesn't give you the answer, the words do.
Precisely. People say what they mean on the surface. The message is in the words themselves. The national communication philosophy could essentially be summed up as, let's cut to the chase.
Cut to the chase, yeah. Get straight to the point. Stop wasting time.
Yes. Now contrast this with high context cultures. If you come from many Latin American, Middle Eastern, or East Asian cultures, you are likely used to high context communication.
Where the meaning is kind of floating in the air.
Right. Meaning is conveyed through implication, through subtle changes in tone, through reading the room, through deference to seniority, and critically, through what is left unsaid.
There's actually a fascinating case study in the research about a woman named Sophia that perfectly illustrates this clash.
Oh, the tech company story. Yes, tell that one.
Yeah, so Sophia is an advanced English speaker, originally from Colombia, and she had lived and worked in London for 2 years before moving to a tech company in Austin, Texas.
So she's no stranger to English-speaking offices.
Not at all. She is incredibly comfortable in an English-speaking corporate environment. But during her first performance review in Texas, her American manager sits her down and says something that catches her completely off guard. He says, "Sophia, your work is great, but I need you to speak up more in meetings. When you have an idea, just put it out there. Don't wait for permission."
Which likely felt like a reprimand for being polite.
It totally did. Sophia was completely taken aback because in her previous workplace in London, and definitely back home in Bogota, the professional norm was to listen carefully, wait your turn, read the room, and always defer to seniority.
It's like this intricate, delicate dance.
Yes, exactly like a dance. Everyone is moving together, reading subtle cues, making sure nobody steps on anyone's toes, paying attention to the hierarchy of the dancers. But her American manager was basically asking her to stop dancing and just run across the floor.
The dance analogy is really visually helpful. But let's dig into the anthropology of why the American manager expects a sprint instead of a waltz.
Yeah, let's dissect his mindset, because he wasn't trying to be mean.
Not at all. He was not being unkind, and he certainly wasn't attacking your personality. In the American framework, assertiveness equals engagement. It equals competence.
If you don't speak, you don't care.
Basically, yeah. If you are sitting quietly in a meeting, an American manager assumes you have nothing to contribute, or worse, that you aren't even paying attention. Directness, in this context, is not readness, it's candor. It is deeply pragmatic.
And it comes back to that classic American phrase, time is money.
Undeniably. Let's look at the historical roots of this. The United States is a nation of immigrants. If you look at New York in the late 1800s, you had people arriving from dozens of different countries, speaking dozens of different languages, trying to build a nation and an economy together.
A giant melting pot.
Right. And they didn't share a 2,000-year history. They didn't share a single religion or cultural background. So how do you do business with someone when you share absolutely zero cultural context?
You can't rely on the unsaid because they won't hear it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to be literal. You have to be explicit. You strip away the nuanced, high-context implications because the other person won't understand them. You say exactly what you mean, make the deal, and move on.
So it was a survival tactic.
Yes, that frontier survival mechanism evolved into the modern, low-context corporate culture we see today.
So the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, and Americans want to take that straight line in their conversations to save time and avoid misunderstandings.
Precisely. Though, we should probably add a caveat here. Regional nuances absolutely exist across a country this massive.
Oh, for sure. Texas is different from New York.
Definitely. The overarching cultural bias is toward clarity and efficiency, but an American from the Deep South might have more genteel, slightly indirect style compared to the absolute rapid-fire bluntness you might encounter in New York City.
Right.
And someone from Minnesota might use a bit more hedging, saying, "That's interesting," when they actually mean, "I don't like that." But compared to high-context cultures globally, the American baseline is still heavily skewed toward low-context, direct communication.
Okay, so going back to Sophia in Texas, she realizes this invisible wall exists. She doesn't change who she is fundamentally, right? She doesn't stop being Colombian.
No, of course not.
But she changes her strategy. She starts jumping into conversations. She uses phrases like, "I have a thought on this," or "Can I jump in here?" And suddenly, her visibility at the company skyrockets.
Her ideas were always there.
Exactly. But now they're packaged in a way her American colleagues can culturally digest.
She learned the cultural rhythm. She adapted to the low-context environment.
But, okay, this leads us to a massive, glaring contradiction. I really need you to explain this to me.
Oh, what is it?
If Americans are so incredibly focused on directness, on pragmatism, on time is money, and getting straight to the point, how on earth do we explain the fact that they are also constantly smiling, making small talk about the weather, and chatting with complete strangers in the grocery store line?
Yeah, yes.
It feels totally hypocritical.
It does seem like a paradox, doesn't it? The outward friendliness is ubiquitous. It's everywhere you look.
It really is. You walk into a store and someone asks, "How are you?" You get into a rideshare and the driver, within 5 minutes, is telling you their entire life story, their dreams, their recent divorce.
Which is overwhelming if you're not used to it.
Totally. They are so warm on the surface. But you, the listener, might have noticed that despite this surface-level warmth, forming deep, lasting friendships with Americans can feel incredibly difficult for newcomers.
To understand this, we need to introduce a classic anthropological framework. It's called the peach versus coconut culture theory. It perfectly maps this dynamic.
Oh, I love this theory. Break it down for us.
Okay, so Americans are considered a peach culture. Think of a peach. It's soft, sweet, and fuzzy on the outside.
Very inviting.
Yes, it's very easy to take the first bite. That soft exterior represents the American public persona, the smiling, the small talk, the willingness to share a personal story with a stranger on an airplane. They are highly accessible. However, if you keep biting into a peach, what do you hit?
You hit the pit, a hard, impenetrable stone right in the center.
Exactly. That pit represents their private life, their deep financial struggles, their true inner circle of lifelong friends. You can interact with the soft exterior of the peach for years and never crack the pit.
That makes a lot of sense.
Now, contrast that with the coconut culture. Think of Germany, Russia, or many Eastern European cultures. A coconut is hard on the outside. It's tough, hairy, and uninviting.
You don't just take a bite out of a coconut.
Definitely not. You don't smile at strangers on the street. You don't ask the barista how their weekend was.
Right. If you smile at a stranger in a coconut culture, they think you're either crazy or you're trying to sell them something.
Correct. But if you take the time to crack the coconut, if you prove yourself, earn their trust, and build a relationship over time, what's inside?
Sweet milk and soft meat.
Yes. Once you are in for life. Friendship means deep, mutual obligation. The friction happens when a coconut meets a peach.
Oh, I can see where this is going.
The coconut sees the peach smiling and sharing stories and assumes they have cracked the shell and reached a deep intimacy. But the peach was just sharing their fuzzy exterior.
So I'm playing devil's advocate here. If I am a listener from a coconut culture, this American peach friendliness feels, well, it feels fake.
Right. It feels deceptive.
It feels insincere. If a colleague asks me, "How are you?" but they don't actually want to sit down and hear about my terrible week, why did they even ask the question? It feels like a trap. I answer honestly, and suddenly I'm making everyone uncomfortable.
It feels like a trap because you are interpreting the question literally as a low-context exchange of information rather than interpreting it culturally.
Ah, okay.
We need to reframe how we view small talk. In the American context, small talk is not superficial fluff. It is relationship currency.
Relationship currency. I like that.
That outward warmth is a cultural default setting. Americans are socialized from childhood to signal approachability. Small talk is the social lubricant that keeps the gears of a highly individualistic society running smoothly.
Because they don't have the hierarchy to fall back on.
Exactly. So when they ask, "How are you?" They are not launching a medical or psychological inquiry. They are simply acknowledging your presence and signaling that they are open to a smooth, friction-free interaction.
So giving a heavy, emotional, highly detailed answer to a casual "How are you?" is like, it's like bringing a 5-course roast beef dinner to a casual afternoon cocktail party.
The appetizer analogy is close, but let's take it further. It's a fundamental misreading of the social contract.
Oh, how so?
You brought a heavy meal to an event where people are expecting light hors d'oeuvres. You are demanding deep emotional labor where only a light, reciprocal acknowledgement was offered. It overwhelms the interaction.
And this isn't just about casual social settings, right? It has a massive professional edge.
Massive.
Let's talk about the corporate meeting. You walk into a conference room, you have a tight agenda, you sit down. In a coconut culture, the professional, respectful thing to do is open the folder and start item 1. Do not waste people's time.
Get straight to business.
Exactly. But in the US, there's always that mandatory 2 to 3 minutes of chatting about the weather or a recent sports game or weekend plans.
And if you skip those 2 minutes, you are making a critical error.
Really, a critical error.
Absolutely. To an American, skipping the small talk makes you appear cold, standoffish, or solely transactional. Those few minutes are doing vital social work.
Like what?
They are building rapport, establishing trust, and signaling that you are a personable human being who is easy to collaborate with. If you just launch into the agenda, you might be seen as highly efficient in your home country, but in the American workplace, you are seen as abrupt and difficult to work with. The peach fuzz is mandatory before you get to the business.
And we also have to talk about the packaging of this friendliness, specifically the sheer volume of enthusiasm.
The energy level.
Yeah. If you learned English from British textbooks or by watching British news broadcasts, you are facing a whole new ballgame in the US. Let's contrast American enthusiasm with British understatement.
This is a vital distinction for advanced learners.
Yeah.
Because British English relies heavily on self-deprecating humor, irony, and understatement.
Oh, definitely.
If a team completes a massive, highly successful project, a British manager might say, "Oh, that's rather good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not a bad effort."
Which means it's incredible.
Right. But an American in the exact same situation.
They would say, "That is amazing. Incredible job. I absolutely love this. We crushed it."
Without a doubt. The American is leaning heavily into enthusiasm. If you bring British understatement to an American office, you're rather good might be interpreted as they didn't really like it, they are just being polite.
Wow, so you really have to dial it up.
You have to understand that the American Register of Enthusiasm is simply dialed much higher. What feels like an exaggeration to you is simply baseline communication to them.
Which flows perfectly into our next major realization. Because that outward enthusiasm we see in small talk, that high energy when talking about a project or the weather, it doesn't just apply to external things.
No, it turns inward.
Exactly. It applies to how Americans view and speak about themselves and their own achievements.
And this is perhaps the most difficult hurdle for many advanced learners to navigate internally. We're talking about the global virtue of modesty versus the American expectation of confidence.
Modesty is such a big deal in so many places.
In many parts of the world, modesty is a cardinal virtue. You do not draw attention to your accomplishments. You keep your head down, you work hard, and you wait for others to notice your excellence.
Right. If you boast, you are seen as arrogant, selfish, or lacking humility. The nail that sticks out gets hammered down, as the proverb goes.
But in the U.S., a healthy self-regard is rewarded. Confidence is not a vice. It is an expectation.
It's required.
Yes. If you do great work, you are expected to be able to articulate that you did great work. You are the CEO of your own career.
Let's look at the ultimate proving ground for this. The job interview.
Oh, the American job interview.
This dynamic is wild if you aren't prepared for it. In the American context, you absolutely have to sell yourself. The interviewer asks the classic question, what are your strengths?
A terrifying question for a modest person.
Exactly. Now, if you come from a culture of deep modesty, you might offer a self-effacing answer. You might say, oh, I'm just an ordinary person. I try to do my best. My team was really the reason we succeeded. Nothing special, really.
And how does the American interviewer interpret that?
They do not think you are humble. They think you are incompetent.
Exactly.
They think you genuinely lack skills and lack confidence. It's like trying to sell someone a high-end sports car, but you refuse to open the hood to show them the engine because you don't want to seem showy.
That's a brilliant analogy.
The buyer's just going to assume there is no engine in there at all?
It's not just opening the hood, it's revving the engine so they can hear the horsepower. In the American framework, a certain amount of self-promotion is viewed as honest and authentic.
Authentic? Really?
Yes. You are not pretending to be better than you are. You are simply refusing to pretend to be less than you are.
Yeah.
You own your success. Modesty, in this specific context, reads as either insecurity or a lack of self-awareness.
And this optimism and confidence shape the actual vocabulary of the language.
Yeah.
We mentioned it before with the British comparison, but the superlatives are everywhere in American English.
They really are.
Things aren't just good, they are the best. Ideas aren't interesting, they are incredible. You don't just like a suggestion, you love it.
Everything is dialed to 11.
Yes. If you try to dial back this enthusiasm to sound more reasonable or modest, you run the risk of sounding totally disengaged or pessimistic to an American ear.
It goes even deeper into the cultural psyche when you look at the origins.
Uh-huh.
Think about the Protestant work ethic that heavily influenced early American culture.
Oh, the idea that hard work equals goodness.
Right. The idea that hard work leads to visible success, and that success is a sign of good character. Look at the rich vernacular of motivational phrases embedded in everyday American English.
Like what?
Phrases like, you got this, the sky's the limit, go for it, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. These are not just empty cliches. They reflect a deeply held cultural belief in meritocracy.
The American dream.
Exactly. It is the linguistic shadow of the American dream. The idea that individual agency, hard work, and self-belief make absolutely anything possible.
Even if modern Americans view the reality of the American dream with a lot more nuance and skepticism these days, the linguistic patterns haven't changed. The vocabulary is still incredibly rigid in its optimism. You don't complain about an impossible task, you call it a challenge or an opportunity.
The vocabulary practically forces you into an optimistic posture. These behaviors, this directness, this sunny small talk, this confident self-promotion, they are ingrained from childhood. They are intrinsically part of how Americans experience and perform their identity through language.
Okay, so we have unpacked the invisible wall. We understand the egalitarian roots. We understand the low context directness driven by a history of immigration and trade. We understand the peach versus coconut warmth paradox. We understand the necessity of confident self-promotion. But understanding all of this is only half the battle.
The theory is great, but you need practice.
Exactly. How do you, the listener, actually apply this to your daily life without feeling like you are faking a brand new personality?
The very first step to practical application is self-reflection. I want you to mentally pause right now. Think about your own native communication style.
Get to know your own baseline.
Yes. When you speak your first language, are you indirect? Do you rely on high context cues? Are you a coconut? Are you deeply uncomfortable discussing your own achievements?
It's so important to figure out your baseline so you know how far you have to stretch.
Indeed. Because the goal here is not to abandon your identity. We are not asking you to become a different person or erase your native culture.
Please don't do that.
We are asking you to add a new layer of communicative competence. Think of it as putting on a different hat depending on the context. You're expanding your repertoire to include American cultural fluency.
Let's get into the actionable strategies. Let's give you some concrete tools you can use tomorrow morning. First up, small talk. How do we master this relationship currency?
Start with low-stakes openers. Keep it simple and observable. Beautiful day out there, isn't it? Or, have you been to this coffee shop before?
Nothing too deep.
Right. These statements simply signal friendliness. And when someone asks you how you are, you must reciprocate and redirect. Keep it brief, keep it upbeat, can't complain. How about yourself?
Oh, that's a good one.
You are matching the energy, hitting the tennis ball back over the net, and moving on.
I love that. Can't complain. How about yourself? It is a perfect, culturally fluid formula. Okay, next actionable strategy. Professional confidence. We need to eliminate the weak hedging language.
In a professional setting, clarity is respect. Replace phrasing like, I think maybe I helped a little with the project, with clear, assertive phrasing.
Take ownership.
Yes. Try saying, I played a key role in the project's success, or I spearheaded that initiative. You are stating a fact. It is not arrogant. It is accurate.
Now here's a big one. Let's talk about delivering criticism or feedback. Americans have a very specific formula for this, usually called the feedback sandwich.
Yes. You don't just deliver the negative critique on its own. You open with a positive statement, you deliver the constructive critique in the middle, and you close with encouraging remarks.
A slice of praise, the meat of the criticism, and another slice of praise.
That's the recipe.
Wait, hold on. I have to call a timeout here.
What's up?
You just spent an hour telling me that Americans are low context, that time is money, and that they value absolute directness.
I did.
But the feedback sandwich is literally hiding criticism between two fake compliments. Isn't that highly manipulative and completely indirect? That feels totally contradictory to everything we've discussed.
It seems contradictory on the surface, I completely agree. But it actually makes perfect sense when you combine the different cultural values we've unpacked today.
Really?
How? Yes, Americans value directness, but they also value egalitarianism and the peach culture of friendliness. If a manager delivers harsh, unvarnished criticism, it threatens the egalitarian dynamic. It pulls rank.
It reminds them of the hierarchy.
Exactly. It pierces the soft exterior of the peach. The feedback sandwich is a pragmatic solution. It allows the manager to deliver the necessary course correction, the directness, while constantly reaffirming that the employee is valued and that the hierarchy remains flat.
So it softens the blow to maintain the working relationship.
Exactly. It keeps the team feeling like a team.
Okay, that makes sense. It's about preserving the relationship while still getting the point across. Let's dissect the specific corporate jargon often used in this scenario.
Good idea.
An American manager might say, I really like the direction you're going with this. One thing I'd tweak is the timeline. I think we need a bit more runway, but overall, this is solid work.
Notice the architecture of those phrases.
Right.
Like the direction, that's the positive opening.
The first piece of bread.
Right. Tweak the timeline and need more runway. That is the soft, jargon-heavy delivery of the negative feedback. And then the positive close. Solid work. Mastering these combinations makes you sound incredibly polished.
Just to pause for a second. Let's explain runway. This is an aviation metaphor, right? Like an airplane needing enough road to take off.
Spot on. Think of a heavy airplane. If it doesn't have enough paved runway, it can't achieve liftoff, and it crashes. When a manager says, we need more runway, they are saying the project needs more time.
But notice what the metaphor achieves.
Yes, it removes the personal blame. The manager isn't saying you are too slow. They are saying the project is a heavy plane, and the environment needs to provide more road.
It's a brilliant linguistic trick to deliver critical feedback without making it a personal attack on your competence.
It's very effective.
Wow, that is incredibly nuanced. What about when you just flat out disagree with someone? How do you do that gracefully?
You want to avoid aggressive opposition. Instead of saying you are wrong or that's a bad idea, practice saying, I see where you're coming from, but I have a slightly different take.
That's very smooth.
It acknowledges their point, validates their contribution, while allowing you to assert your own opinion. And finally, when you receive a compliment, do not deflect it. Do not say, oh, it was nothing.
Right. If someone says, great presentation, and you say, oh, it was terrible, I was so nervous, you make the American uncomfortable.
You really do.
They give you a social gift, and you basically threw it on the floor.
Exactly. Deflecting a compliment forces the other person to comfort you or repeat the compliment, which is an awkward social burden. Instead, say, thank you, I put a lot of work into it. Accept it with grace and own your achievement.
But I have to ask, what if practicing these phrases feels genuinely physically uncomfortable? What if saying, I played a key role, makes your stomach tie up in knots because it feels so unnatural and arrogant to your core identity?
I want to reassure you that physical discomfort is completely standard. It is a sign that you are stretching a new cultural muscle.
It's growing pains.
Exactly. It's about building muscle memory. These behaviors are ingrained in Americans from childhood. As an outsider, hitting the ground running requires conscious, deliberate practice out loud.
You have to practice.
You might need to literally practice saying, thank you, I put a lot of work into it, in front of a mirror, until the new cultural rhythm stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling natural. It's going to feel like acting at first.
It's a workout for your cultural fluency. So let's bring it all together. Let's summarize the 3 pillars we have explored today. First, we looked at how the history of egalitarianism and immigration drives low-context, direct, clear speech. Americans want to cut to the chase.
That's pillar 1.
Second, we explored the peach versus coconut warmth paradox, how that surface-level friendliness and small talk acts as the vital social glue for workplaces and daily interactions. You now know that "how are you" is a social ritual, not a medical inquiry.
Pillar 2.
And third, we uncovered how optimistic self-expression and confidence shape professional success, from everyday superlatives to high-stakes job interviews.
It is a complete paradigm shift. And it leaves us with a rather profound question.
Oh, I'm ready.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a deep, provocative thought to mull over as you go about your week. We've established that language is a mirror of culture. But what happens to your own internal mindset when you begin to adopt these American communicative traits?
Oh, that is a fascinating question. Does the mirror start reflecting back onto you?
Exactly. If you start speaking with ingrained American optimism, if you practice asserting your achievements and leaning into that confident vocabulary daily, does it eventually begin to change the way you actually view your own potential?
Does acting the part make you the part?
Does adopting the language of confidence actually make you a more confident person internally? Does playing the part eventually change the actor? It's something to really explore as you continue your journey toward mastery.
I love that thought. Does the language change you? Think about that the next time you're standing by the office coffee machine. You have put in the hard work to reach this advanced C1 or C2 level. You have passed the exams, you know the grammar, you have the vocabulary, and now you know the unspoken rules of the game.
You're ready to play.
You are not just speaking English, you are ready to connect and thrive in the culture. I want to explicitly remind you to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel so we can keep bringing you these deep dives. Remember that invisible wall on your first day at work. You have the tools to tear it down now. Keep practicing, keep expanding your repertoire, and we'll see you next time.